Good evening. I'm Dr. Basil Considine. I'm here from the ACU Online Writing Center, and today we're going to be talking about how to take the results of a test or assessment and to put that into action. Specifically, how to use these in writing in an argumentative fashion to convince people that some action should be taken. It could be understanding a phenomenon to inform policy. It could be as part of applying for funding for something. It could be explaining and justifying personnel decisions to influence a course of action. Whatever you're doing, it's always good to have data to back up a decision, whether that's a decision you're making in your own life, in your work, or something else. Now, if you're new to the Online Writing Center, we work with students through a variety of different avenues, including asynchronous appointments, where you sign up for a time and you send us your paper by that time, and real-time appointments, where you meet with someone and are able to ask questions back and forth and get that feedback immediately. There is no difference on our end which one you elect, except that some people are available at very specific times and some people are not. So if you look on our schedule, you'll see that each scheduling block is set aside for either asynchronous or real-time. If you select a real-time, it could be by phone, could be by Zoom. That could be something that you ask which is most appropriate or what looks like it would be more helpful depending on your situation. I've had students who are being driven somewhere, and so they're asking more general questions about planning things or addressing specific problems, and other students who really like to see the screen when we're talking about something and to be able to highlight or change things immediately. And if that's what you're thinking would work best for you, just look for that option. That said, many of our students, for reasons of their work schedules, will select asynchronous appointments so that they can send their draft in, and then whenever they get the feedback, then they can work on it. But they're not bound to, I must be available at this specific hour, especially if your schedule is more malleable or you have childcare or something else that you're working around. Not a problem. Pick the option that works best for you. And we have a variety of tutors located in different time zones to better help you. With that, so if you go to the my.acu.edu portal, to MyACU, and you select the resources drop-down, you'll find a link to the Online Writing Center. If you've made an appointment before, it's pretty much the same thing, but you do have a video available if it's the first time or it's been long enough that we've changed the system a little bit. Basically, if you log in and it looks a little different, I'd recommend watching the video because it does walk you through all the different steps. All right, now this is part of our webinar series exploring different topics. So if you're looking for things related to your classes, go to the Writing Webinars page. You can see the link at the top, and then select the CONR, in this case, the program code for all the courses that we have webinar tie-ons for specific assignments. So if you're in the leadership program, getting your EDD, your doctorate in education, you could select that and you'd see starting with Leadership 701, marching through all the different courses with specific assignments that have tie-in webinars. So we're going to be looking at a few things today, including our APA course paper template. So there's a link at the top to download that. Also, things you might want to know, we have a YouTube channel where you can watch videos on the go, and also a blog where we explore different topics. So our main objectives today, we're going to look at first how to discuss in writing in APA style, how to discuss the results of a test or an assessment. And then we'll look at the specific assignment, that's the catalyst for our discussion, and then we'll talk about how to combine these things together in outlining and drafting a paper. So let's talk about what you should be doing and how you should be doing things in APA style. Now, I'm going to mention a couple tie-in webinars that you might be very interested in. If you're writing about the results of a test about yourself, say you took a personality test or a leadership style survey or something like that, you might want to take a look at our Reflective Writing Through a Conceptual Lens webinar. This is one of several that explore reflection papers. This specific one exploring how to write your reflection paper using the results from a test. From, in this case, the Philosophy of Adult Education Inventory. Another one that you might be interested in, because often students come to us saying, I know how to report the results. I'm less sure how to argue about how to justify things that I want to do using those results. And if that's something that sounds like something you want, I would suggest taking a look at our Beyond Summary, Adding Analysis and Synthesis to Your Writing webinar. So this talks about how to construct a multifaceted argument that includes not just making claims, not just presenting evidence, but discussing that evidence, what we call analysis in the formal sense, and how to create new meanings from that, what we call synthesis in the formal sense. So I do strongly recommend those two. But for any assignment, when you are writing about yourself, I'm going to suggest that you start from the position of answering each prompt directly, then responding in detail. If you're writing about your own experience, to use I statements. Use the language of the prompt so we have consistent wording and it's clear that you are referring to that exact thing. Related, use consistent word choices to refer to the same thing. That's not something that other writing styles always do, but it is something that is strongly encouraged in scientific writing, and APA style was developed for social science writing, so it carries over. Basically, let us know that you're talking about the same thing by using the same word. So, oh yes, I'm going to pick you up in my car. Well, car is not specific. If you say, oh yes, I'm going to pick you up in my car, my van is white and sits 15 passengers, you might be referring to the same thing. Or you might not be. Now, I'm from a large family. I learned to drive in a 15-passenger van, and we used a car to refer to the van. But when we had a smaller car, a sedan, and the big van, someone else might be expecting us to be referring to that little one, that sedan, when we say car. So if you mean van, say van and there's no confusion. If you mean the sedan, use sedan, so on and so forth. You also want to use the rubric and instructions together to come up with the approximate headings or system of organization for structuring things and deciding how long, how much detail you should go into about something. We're going to come back to those. But when you are selecting a test for an assignment, you can help give yourself some things to write about. In this case, you took the test already. You took it in CONR 602, I believe. And so you have those scores, and you also have the advantage of you took them long enough that you've had some time to think about it. Do these seem accurate to who you are now, who you are then? How do you feel about it? Things like that. And if you are writing about test scores, well, it's good to look at what the test overall is designed to do and what the specific sections or scores areas are reporting on, including, is this something that's grounded in a specific theory, a concept, a model, or work of literature? So an example that I like to use is that if you have something that's based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, well, one of the precepts of the hierarchy, or the theory underlining it, is that you have to attend to basic lower-level needs before you could get to the higher ones. People are less likely to be interested in philosophy if they are starving to death. You should probably feed them first, and then take care of whatever else you want to do next. And so, because of this, there may be things that are good to do or possible to do, but are out of scope of a particular test because of what its focus is on. A test for executive leadership may be very different if it's designed for leaders of, we'll say, large multinational corporations than something that is more local. How you might interface with the local community, the value systems, employee happiness could be very different depending on the setting that it is designed for. So as an example of how to refer to a test, so for example, if you have something that you are taking from a website, so you took the test online, you just cite it as you would any other online material in APA style. So for this, which is something that was posted as, okay, this is a daily release, is a not quite a press release, but a press-facing, press-like publication by the World Health Organization. So you could see that this, for that type of periodical publication, has the year, the month, and the day in the reference entry. But when we're citing it in the text, it's just going to be the author and date, World Health Organization 2018. Now, if it's something that does not have the day there, and it's just posted on a website, and not something that's coming out on this kind of regular publication schedule, well, then you would just have the year there. And indeed, if there's no date there, then you'd have N period, D period, indicating no date. So, to take an example of a common test, I completed the Emotional Intelligence Appraisal. That's the formal name of the test, so it's a proper noun, capitalized in title case. And then we include the parenthetical citation right after the test name to indicate, oh yes, that's where you find that specific test that I was referring to. And then you can go on and discuss, now that you've identified things, according to my results, my emotional intelligence appraisal results showed that blah. Now, you only need to introduce that author date citation for the test the first time you introduce it, unless you are discussing some particulars that are drawn directly from that source, as opposed to your test results, but like a description of what the test is. If you're referencing that, of course we want to know where did that information come from, so author date. But if you're clearly referring to your results, once you've introduced, I took this test, you could say my results, and that's fine. Now, if it's something that's published in a book, it's going to be standard author date, like I scored very high in the self-management category. According to Bradbury and Greaves, 2009, an important strategy for this is, quote. And then you don't want to just report, here's what they said about it. Well, put it into practice. How does it apply to your own life? So that's where this last sentence comes in. This is a strategy that I practice on a daily basis. So you're analyzing or assessing it in relation to your life, which may explain my high score in this category. It's saying, okay, I think that thing I do may be responsible for that. All right, so let's take a look at this specific assignment, the thing that's catalyzing our discussion. All right, so we're taking a look at CONR 615's Week 2 assignment, the vital role of social emotional intelligence in school leaders. And if you're looking at the instructions, it begins with a preamble, this overview, as they called it. We say, okay, so this was introduced by this author, it's been used a lot, it has a positive impact on school environments and student achievement. All good things. And then we have some kind of professional orientation. And although this is a preamble, I would recommend paying attention to this because it's giving you some hints about the things that you can write about the ways you might be applying the assessment results. So keep in mind the last sentence. Okay, the results have been used to improve school environments and improve student achievement. Okay. And then a major objective for having you take the survey back in 602 was to help you become more aware of your own emotional intelligence. And then a recap of what this is assessing. The 4 specific areas: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. I mention this because often students will look at the preamble text and say, that's just background, and skip to the main assignment. But this is on the longer side for this program, the paper being written, and so we have here suggestions about what you might be writing about. Now we enter the instructions proper for the assignment. Thinking back to the feedback you received from the survey, reflect on what you learned about yourself. Write a reflection paper using these prompts. And we have looking at what this has done in your personal and professional life in the last span of time since you took this. We have comparing emotional intelligence versus intelligence quotient in the context of education and education leadership. And how might understanding this more, understanding these concepts, how that might change what you're doing in your classroom. Okay. And then we have a list of other things that to write about. What feelings are most difficult for you to regulate? Which off switches do you tend to use? And right now, the school that you're working in or used to work in, and how would you assess it? Is it more on the side of being power-based or more interest-based? And then we look at the instructions. Okay, 1,400 to 1,500 words. That's roughly 6 double-spaced pages, not counting the title page, not counting references. Each prompt should have a heading, so that's important. We should have at least 6 headings here in the paper. No direct quotes, so you want to be paraphrasing or summarizing anything you're taking from the textbook assignments or from the descriptions of the test. And the rest is just standard APA formatting. So if you're using a course paper template, that'll be done for you already. All right, so let's see. If we look at the distribution of points here, so 50 points per assignment, so just double everything in the right-hand column. So we see that most of the points here are going to, are you writing about these specific things listed here? Note that there are 6 bullets, and there are 5 items here at the top. We want to make sure that there's a clear alignment between what you're writing and what you're being graded on. So I would recommend actually using these as the basis for your headings for your paper. Now you're going to have one extra one because there are 6 high-level bullets on these pages and 5 things here, but you can figure out how to subdivide those pretty quickly. All right, well, with no further ado, let's look at how we would start outlining and drafting. And if you don't have it yet, the first thing I'd recommend is grabbing a copy of our APA course paper template. Now, if you click through the link, you'll want to go ahead and download a copy of the template in Word form, and then open it up in Word. Now you can go ahead and fill in your name, your course information, the title of your paper on your own. But make sure that the title here matches the title here, because they should be identical. Now we got some placeholder text here. I'm just going to remove this immediately. And I'm also going to remove these example references here. What I would recommend doing, because this has some explicit instructions saying that you are supposed to be responding to these prompts and labeling them in a specific way, go ahead and grab those instructions from the course website. As you can see, I have the instructions up here, and these are the pieces we're most interested in right now. We're going to come back to those headings in just a moment, but let's go over to Word and just start out by pasting these in here. Now, those aren't following the formatting we want for Word. They don't match the rest, so click on this box here and select Match Destination Formatting. And now, although we're not going to keep them here permanently, we can tell very easily that those are the instructions. All right, the next step, because there is this instruction saying to include a subheading for each prompt, and we know that they're being tracked this way, let's go ahead and add these in, and add in headings. All right, so this first one is going to be EI Impact on Work and Classroom. We want that to be written in title case, so every word with 4 or more letters gets the first letter capitalized, among other things. And we're going to set this to be an APA Level 1 heading, which is centered and bolded. Now in the middle, we're going to have just a regular paragraph, so we'll use the body text style there to make sure it has that. And in fact, here I'm going to go ahead and quickly change these so these are not APA Level 1s. We still want to identify them easily, which is why I'm setting them as bullets. But in between, we're going to go ahead and add the rest of these, EI versus EQ. EI versus IQ. And make that a APA Level 1 heading. You can either click on it here or up here, and you can see that the formatting changes immediately. And the next one here is personal regulation of emotions. So if we look at this, we see, okay, personal regulation of emotions. It's kind of here, kind of this, kind of that. Well, let's start out by putting this in here. And once we're done adding these, we can always add more. So off switches, that is down here. We'll make that AP level 1 as well. And the next one is current work environment. So when a professor comes to grade this paper and is looking for the things listed in the rubric, we wanted to make it very easy for them to spot and say, yep, that's where they have that section, look at it, yep, check, okay, they get the credit. But although we've added the headings for those, remember that we did a count earlier, and there were more things listed here as bullets than were listed down here. So the solution here is to see what would work logically for getting a subheading. Now, some of this is suggested already because we have these sub-bullets here, but let's take a look. How might additional knowledge? Okay, if these are subheadings of that, then let's go ahead and you could call it relevance to personal classroom teaching, perhaps. We'll set that to APA level 2. So it's a subheading of this. And let's call that regulating feelings. And you can make these have subheadings as well. So triggers, physical cues. Now, when you're ever you're using a subheading, you should have at least 2 of those subheadings there. So here we have 2 level 2s under a level 1. Great. Here we have 2 level 3s under a 2. Great. And that's all APA compliant now. And so now we can look at this and say, okay, we have some idea of how this might be divided. Where should you spend the most time writing? And the points here are a clue about that, because this EI impact on work and classroom section, that should probably be longer because that has more points allocated to it than the rest. Okay, well, let's start by just looking at the original question. How might you be writing about your results? And so let's go ahead and look back at some of the earlier slides here. So when you are referring to the results of a test or assessment, we want to be clear if it's something of yours that you did, like your results, use I and my. And when you are describing things, don't just list what the scores are, but explain what they are. Now, here's some example phrases. You can pause this if you need to take a moment to read these out loud. Otherwise, let's dive in. And let's say I'm writing this reflection. And which test are we doing again? Well, we have, for this assignment, we have the ESEIU. All right. And you'll put in the author date information for that. And don't just tell us that you took it, but tell us when. For example, I might write, I took the ESEIU during the fall 2022 semester. So one thing that people sometimes do, especially when it's a test that's being administered a while ago, they'll go in, they'll take it again. So if that's something that you're writing about, well, tell us. Okay, I first took the ESEI2 then. So remember, the instructions are asking you to tell us what impact it has had. So that could be an impact on yourself, the classroom you're teaching, the people that you work with, or how they relate with or interact with you. So don't just tell us what's happened, but tell us why you think that's happened. And so tell us what you did, tell us what effect you felt it did or didn't have. Now, note here that the test is identified in that first sentence. Say when, and so you can refer to it during the first test and the second test, for example, and to differentiate those results. Now, when we're looking at this next one here, this is more pulling out. You can certainly talk about yourself, because if you have experience as an educator in the classroom, that's fair game. But this is more looking at it in a more general sense. So here's probably where you might reference the course text or text. You might reference your own experience. And we'll talk about the own experience because that's something that I get a lot of questions about. So you might, for example, refer to something that you have observed during your years of teaching. Now, this is saying, okay, here's an observation I've had. Well, tell us more about that. For example, and then whatever it is. And you can analyze that, and I would say definitely do want to analyze that. For example, blah. And you can refer to the literature. Now, do make sure that you introduce the acronyms that you're using. So if this is the first time it's being used in the paper, then emotional intelligence. Now, you want to compare and contrast, so go ahead and make sure that you do that. Let's take a look at this. So this is also going to be something where you'd be referring back to your results, to your experience, to what the readings have said. And so how it might be applied in general, how might it be applied in your specific classroom, your population of students and everything. All right, now we have some things talking about yourself, and just as a reminder, you can and should in APA style use I statements when you are describing yourself. I did this. My feelings that I have the most difficulty regulating are, etc. So make sure that you do that. You don't want to write about a teacher who sounds and looks an awful lot like you, but you're not going to tell us is you, because that's just confusing. And APA 7th edition, the current one, encourages the use of I to clarify who did what. Alright, the off switches shouldn't be a problem. In general, we're looking at something with this paper length of around 6 pages. You know, somewhere maybe 3/4 to a page per level 1 heading, possibly with the conclusion added at the end. And if you go through not just these instructions here, but look back to what the preamble says is important. Oh, having a positive impact on school environments on student achievement. How have you noticed this playing out in your own life? How would you like it to play out? What improvements do you think you might make or have made? Similarly here, we have those 4 areas: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. So absolutely, when you are describing the impact here, you can break it up and give the overall big picture, but then follow it up with paragraphs that focus in on one or more of those sub-areas within the larger ESCI2. Similarly, when we're looking at these questions here, alright, make sure that you get everything here, and also look and see, okay, well, in light of the things that you know you're being graded on, how these are grouped together. Current work environment. Well, think of the school where you work. If you're not presently working, think of your most recent one. Would you say it is closer to being a power-based or an interest-based organization? Now, that's not it must be one extreme or the other. Most organizations are somewhere in the middle. And you can also talk about where it has been versus where it is now, because that can change, sometimes change very rapidly, and where you would like it to be. So if you think that there is room for an improvement, especially if something related to the emotional intelligence that we're discussing in this paper, absolutely you can write about that. And you can see from the questions leading into it that there's a lot of stuff that you could talk about how you might, for example, do you have coworkers you would think would benefit from understanding what they have trouble regulating? Are there coworkers or new teachers who you want them to be able to recognize physical cues, either in their colleagues or in students? Talk about those things. They're things that might come up in one of these initial sections that when you get to the workplace application, you can come back to it and say, all right, so I saw this in myself, and here's what I want to do next. This is in part an opportunity for you to expound on your vision of what things should be, how emotional intelligence and an understanding of that would benefit you and those around you, which could potentially include professional colleagues and students. That's all we have for today. Again, I strongly recommend taking a look at some of our related webinars if you heard about the Beyond Summary webinar, for example, and said, oh, yes, I would like to be able to expand my arguments more easily or more systematically. And then if you're struggling with reflection papers, go ahead and take a look at that webinar. We have many more on different reflection papers, but we need to wrap this up. So I will say check things out. If you're looking for something, you're not sure if we have it, and you can't answer that by searching our archive, send us an email. Tell us what you're looking for, and we might be able to identify a specific resource for you. In some cases, if it's reasonably fast, it might whip something up just for you, or otherwise help you solve that problem and answer those questions. So, if you have any more questions, you know how to reach us. Feel free to visit us online, and have a good night.